it's one that people don't often think about until later. But the number one thing to consider is co-leadership. And I mentioned this earlier about dreamers and doers, is who do you have in your corner who can help you build this community? Because you don't build a community fully alone. It's never a waste of time to get to know people in your membership. People join communities not just to get access to content, but to meet people that they would otherwise not meet. And not just meet them, but actually form a relationship with them.
This automated matchmaking that you're doing on, or does that really work?
Yeah, it does, with two exceptions. We have 100% NPS on those conversations. I used to do manual matchmaking on people would tell me, oh, I want to be matched. And I would look at everybody and be like, this person has a cat and this person has a cat. And I think that they should meet. It was like just turn my community brain on. It would take me forever. And I also had to think about time zones and all kinds of other things like that. People still didn't always vibe with the person that they were matched with. So it's going to happen, but at least this way it's automated. I think a lot of people have this expectation that a successful community looks like everyone participating. It does not. It never looks like that. So this is my setup here. So this is my community. You're not just gathering 10 random people where you're just like, oh, these are 10 cool people. I'm going to put them in a Facebook group or wherever. What needs to be clear is what is going to be the purpose of your community. If the purpose of the community is to, let me think of an example. It's lovers of dogs who are 10 and over, and together we're going to be learning, sharing best practices for caring for aging dogs. Then you can immediately, with those 10 people, start to have conversations. You can start by saying, how old is your dog? And let's just share and introduce ourselves to one another. And then you can start by saying, okay, who do you want to hear from on caring for your aging dog? What experts do you know? Who do you want me to source? What kind of topics? That's got to be really specific. A community builder should have a community of their own. It's really important that we don't get isolated in this, because that is the road to burnout.
Welcome to Beginner Maps, where we interview operators of top community businesses so that you can replicate the best of what these community builders have already figured out. Today, I am thrilled to have the one and only Carrie Melissa Jones with us. If you're from the community building industry, you definitely know her name. And if you're not from this industry, but you are interested in building communities, you should know her name. Carrie is the author of Building Brand Communities, founder of the CMJ Group, where she offers consulting services to organizations like Discord, Google, and Airbnb. Creator of her own community membership called the CMJ Community for community builders and leaders, and a YouTuber. That's a whole lot of things to be doing simultaneously, Carrie.
I'm a mom too.
It's such a pleasure.
Let's not forget.
Oh my God. And a mom.
Yeah, I like to live
incredible.
on the
edge. We can see that.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to start by just dive into it and talk about your community, the new community membership that you started. So previously, you used to do really popular cohort-based course community. And a lot of my friends from the community industry have been a part of that cohort, and they're always speaking great things about it. So tell us about this transition from the cohort-based course to an evergreen community that people can just join year round.
Yeah, it's a great question and something I have thought about for years. So we started the cohort-based course in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, and just as a way to get people quickly upskilled in community management, especially online community management. And at the time, it was really important to go through this as a full community experience where everyone joined at the same time, went through the program together. It was a 9-month program, and then finished up at the same time. What I found, though, is that we were turning people away, because I only would launch twice a year. So we were turning people away from getting the skills that they needed. And it broke my heart. And so we figured out, I took maternity leave last summer, and just had a lot of time to think about, okay, what kind of a business model do I want to run, and how do I want to best serve people? And for me, what kept me coming back to the cohort model for over 3 years was that sense of community that you got from a cohort, because you don't get that from just joining an evergreen community. The community builder has to put a lot more intention and effort into creating it. And we're still figuring out what is our brand of creating that welcoming experience. So that was what kept me in the cohort model for so long. But then I thought, we really need to open this up. And so now the course is still available, the one that we would run folks through, but now they can do it on their own and join at any time. And then they can also do month to month if they want. So some people we have members who are in there every single day. They're asking questions about the content. They're making progress. They might not need 9 months to go through the program. And then we have members who are going to take maybe a year to go through it, and more power to you. Take the time that you need to do this work. That was really the big strategic reason for it. And then also just so that I could focus more of my time and effort all year round into doing fun things like challenges. And we're going to be doing both public and private member only gatherings. And so Kelly Shetron, she's the director of strategy for the CMJ group, and we collaborate very closely, and we're just having so much fun just planning what can we do? What are all the parties we can plan throughout the year? And what are the different things that we couldn't do when we were really locked into this course model? So that's been really fun.
Yeah, I want to pull on that thread a little more. So about what are the things that you couldn't do on the course model, like the cohort-based course model? Because I've had 2 people on this podcast, like this very season, who have transitioned from a cohort-based course to an evergreen community. So one is Erin Halper of The Upside. She has a community of consultants, and she mentioned that she started it as a cohort-based course, but then she absolutely hated running it. I think that's not the case for you, but like running a cohort-based course can be pretty intense as compared to running like an evergreen community. Compare the two on the basis of what you can and cannot do in each.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. So I know Erin Halpern's work in the Upside community, and I feel like a lot of creators launched courses during the pandemic, which is exactly what I did. And I feel like now it's been 4 years, the global economy has drastically shifted. We all knew that was going to happen. And I think in this moment, there's less of an emphasis on taking courses online and more of like, how can we continue to practice and do our work on a daily, regular basis? And the other thing that an evergreen model or a membership model opens up is that people want different things. They want different things from a course. They also want different things from just learning generally. So some folks, like in my membership, for example, they don't come to any calls at all. We do at least a call a week where we're talking about something together. So people come to nothing. They only participate or only even just read what's going on in the community. And you can get that from a course, but the learning modalities tend to be a little bit more limited. And so there's more social learning that's happening if you create an evergreen model. I'm sure that there is someone out there creating the most amazing social learning model for an online course, and you've probably talked to them before, but I just find that I really want to prioritize the social aspect. And I don't want to deprioritize the structured learning. I think that's also really important, but not everyone learns that way. And so let's give them more options. So the evergreen model opens up more options for you, the creator, and for your members, other ways to learn. And the thing that I'm telling our clients all the time is you don't have to do everything to see a dramatic shift in the way that you show up. And that's true of any membership. I'm saying this like our clients in the CMJ community, but also we help others launch memberships. And I tell folks all the time that you can tell your members they don't need to take every course that you have. They don't need to come to every call you have. Your presence as a leader, simply just being who you are, can transform people because you are role modeling for them. And that's profound. And it also takes a lot of stress off of the creator of the community. Yeah. So I think there's so much that it opens up. I could keep talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what's exciting to me.
I like that. And did you have any inspirations for evergreen community memberships when you're building your community that you like really admire and draw inspiration from?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a member of the Dreamers and Doers community. I don't know if you've talked to Gesha Haas before on this podcast.
Erin mentioned that I should, and I'll have to now.
That's how I know Erin, is because Erin is also a member of Dreamers and Doers, or I know her work. I don't know her personally yet, but that community, Gesha, what she's done is just so incredible. And I'm sure you'll talk to her at some point. She started out on a free Facebook group and moved into Circle. But yeah, what she does and the way that she has her team, and the way that she has figured out and delegates co-leadership, that's one of the really important principles of community building, is really impressive. And I'm constantly looking to it for inspiration. But there are a number of other organizations that I look to for inspiration. But I would say that actually the Circle community does a really great job for product support and inspiration community. Fantastic. I'm in there every day now as a Circle
wow.
builder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love
I think
that.
I'm annoying their team at this point. I'm dropping feature requests like constantly. But
But it'll be it's great for them to have Carrie dropping in the community and asking questions.
I'm like, I'm gonna escalate this issue.
I
But
love
no,
that.
it's only because I love the product so much that I'm in there and they know that.
It's amazing. Okay. So you're obviously using Circle for your community platform. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Community and
Okay.
course. I was on
Love this.
Teachable
Okay.
before Teachable. I was on Podia. I've migrated a bunch of times, and I'm now fully on Circle. Everything's on Circle.
Okay. I want to do a little segment. Tell me if it's okay. I want to have the experience of being in your office for 5 minutes where you just share
Okay.
your screen and show me around. Like, I would love to see, and I think the viewers would too, just love to see what you're in, the tools that you're in every day, and maybe just walk us through it all.
Oh
Hang
man,
on.
I'm about to share my screen here in just 1 second. I also, if you want a quick office tour, my baby sits over here
Yes.
sometimes. My
Oh.
partner works over there. My dog is in a tiny recliner.
Ah,
And then I have my book
it's
collection
adorable.
here. Yeah.
I love
So
this.
that's the office tour. But here is my screen. So I'm mostly in Circle, a combination of Circle and Stripe, where I'm looking at membership data and things like that. So yeah, you can see this is the CMJ community. I'm in Slack all day talking to my internal team. So this is my setup here.
Love
So
this.
this is my community. I have my email open like all day, which I know is a horrible productivity mistake that I'm making. But I keep Slack open all day. The team is all in Slack. This is where we talk to each other. We have like our CMJ community, our mod areas. We'll say, oh, I've got this conversation. Can you respond to that one?
Interesting. So
Yeah.
you've got a Zapier integration with Circle, and that goes inside your Slack, and that's like nudges for your team to respond to stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And one thing that we're probably going to start doing, I run a mentee program, a mentor, a small number right now. It's just 3 different community builders inside the program. So they get access to the program for subsidized, like a scholarship. And then I work with them really closely and they take on roles, volunteer roles in the community. And one of them works for a company called Front. And so she just introduced me to this shared inbox setup. And so I'm like, we might end up moving all of our email into this kind of shared inbox where we can comment back and forth internally on emails before we send them out. I think it's used a lot by like customer support teams, but a community team I think would also very much benefit from it. Yeah, this is what we do to moderate things internally. I keep my notifications on, have them all on in Circle, so I can always check them in here. That kind of gets us started. And then we also use Notion for all of our internal, let's see, let me get out of this. I use it for all of our content calendaring and delegation of who's going to post what. So between me and Kelly, who's going to be doing different things. We ran a coaching call today, so that just happened. And then in addition, we also run our work. I mentioned our mentorship program. I run all of the delegation for the mentorship program through here. People sign up for roles and then we're able to check them off as they are completed. And yeah, we can keep up with them
Tell me
that
more
way.
about
So
this mentorship program. What am I
yeah,
looking at and how do you do it? It feels like it's not just a random, I've got a mentorship program and you can sign up. I
yeah.
think it's more thought of.
Yes, it's something I've been doing since I think 2021. I had a somebody who wanted to join the cohort program and she said, I just lost my job, but I really want to join. I'd be happy. I volunteer at my local yoga studio and they let me do help with the front desk and then I get free classes. Is there something we can do here to do something similar? And I was like, yeah, why not? And so her name's Ashley Bernard. This was her idea initially. And then from there, we worked together and figured out, okay, what can I delegate to you? So I started to, at the time, I didn't have this whole Notion board or anything like that. I just said, like, here are the 3 things you can do once a week. and so then I handed things off. And then when we would do the cohort launches, I said, actually, I want to formalize this program. I'm going to bring in 3 people, not just one, because there was more work to do than one person can do. And so then I brought in 3 folks with each cohort. I onboarded them. We would run bi-weekly coaching sessions with them. So they got special time with just me. And then I started to just create this sign-up sheet here in Notion. And the first version of it was very simple. It got better because I don't know if Yuri Lazaruk in now in Poland, but from Ukraine, he helped me like get this to a more organized place. He's very ops focused. And he was like, Carrie, I don't know how to sort this sheet. Please help me. So we improved it. And so now there's like we have an SOP, a standard operating procedure for how to pick folks who apply for this program, how to onboard them, we do like a private kickoff for them. And then how we do all the signups and all that stuff. It's now a well-oiled setup, but it was not in the beginning. And it's taken us 3 years to get to this point. So
wow. I love this. This SOP is basically for the mentors who are signing up, and it helps them get started.
Exactly. And then you'll see here, like there's a link to all of their SOPs in here. So actually every one of these tasks has its own SOP associated with it. I'm big into documenting how to do things because I worked alone for so long, for like years on my consulting work. And then it's taken me a really long time to get to delegation. And so now that I know how to do it, I'm obsessed with it. So yeah, you have an SOP for everything.
I love this.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the back end of that mentorship program. That's where I hang out. And then this is the actual community itself. So we have a public commons area that anyone can join, although you wouldn't know about it until we promote a public event. So we're going to be having one in July coming up. So people can join that way. And you can see in like the public area, no upcoming events, but we have, I think about 100 or 200 folks in this area where they can talk to each other, 172. And then when you're in the public commons, that's all you can see. It's just this area here. But if you're part of the paid community, the CMJ community, you get access to all this here. We have a whole resource library and we're constantly updating this. I'm actually having one of our mentees, she's taking on the role of resource librarian. So she's going to keep this up to date, pick out things that she thinks that we should create resources around and all that. And we do all of our courses in here as well. So I'm in here constantly in the settings, just messing around with things like member onboarding, tagging. I'm checking the analytics and the paywall transactions and things like that. Yeah, there's lots going on here.
I want to pause you for a little bit. So you said the resource library and there's somebody working on that. What is your general process around adding stuff to the library? Is it based off of a member requests something and you realize, okay, we don't have that, and you go out and create a resource for that? Is that the general process?
Yeah. So generally what actually happens is because Kelly and I consult with other teams, like we have a resource for almost anything you can imagine. So the answer is almost never, I don't have that resource, I need to create it, which is one of the beautiful things about running a membership when you're a consultant, is that you're doing the work on one side, and then you're like, okay, how can I codify and templatize that work and then share it with my members so that anyone can do this? And you don't have to spend 10,000 US dollars working with my company. And so that's what we're able to do. Like somebody just the other day asked us about, I think it's under content and programming, do you have an email sequence for onboarding? What are the emails that I should be sending? And I'm like, Kali and I are like, yeah, we've been refining that over years with clients. So we took this and we just updated it, made it public facing. And we said a day later, we uploaded it and said, here you go, we have it. So that's been really cool. And that's the advantage of having done this for so long. And of course, any listeners who are just getting started, you might be like, F you, Carrie, I don't have all these resources. But you could certainly say, yeah, give me a month or give me 2 weeks. I will have a draft of that for you, then get feedback on it and just keep refining and honing. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the other thing, is that a lot of these are just like, you can even tell from this tiny little screenshot, this is a Google Doc. It's not anything like a giant fancy 20-page PDF or anything like that. I mean, some of them are, this one is, but they're not all like that.
I love this. And you also mentioned you have this content calendar on Notion. So how does that work with the resource library? Are you dripping content like every week, or What's that
Yeah.
for?
Great question. No, that's not in here yet. So that's part of the role of this volunteer role of the resource librarian, is figuring out how often do we want to drip out new content? How do we want to share it? Right now, what I'm doing is a monthly spotlight on one of the resources. Because I know if you're a member of this, you're going to be like maybe attending the calls or whatever, but you're not even aware that there's like a video on how to choose your community platform. So I'm going to be doing like a spotlight once a month on, here's this resource, it's available to you, here's how to use it. And then eventually there'll be like a library of all of that as I do it once a week or once a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I let you stop sharing your screen, what's your favorite area of this community?
You know, my favorite area, and this is true, I've done research with like tens of thousands of communities, and general discussion and off-topic chat parts of communities are always the most fascinating, most interesting, and tend to be the most active as well. And so I'm always in this general discussion area, and there's just people just saying nice things, asking all kinds of questions that I never would have even thought people had. So yeah, I'm in here all the time. And then I should say the events. I love, love, love running events. Such a joy. So yeah.
This is amazing. Okay, I'm gonna let you stop sharing your screen now and
Okay.
put
I
you.
know.
That was a bit intense to get right into on the call. So thank you so
I'm
much
happy to.
for sharing your screen and showing us your workspace.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was very insightful. Okay, Carrie, I want to do this mini masterclass with you now for solo creators who are thinking about starting a community. So these are people who maybe they already have a course, like a self-serve course or a newsletter business going on, and they're thinking about adding a community to it. So this will be like a mini masterclass to help them start a community without burning out.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna ask you a few questions, and maybe we can help more people start online communities. Okay, you mentioned you had this workshop, this talk a few weeks or maybe months ago about the
Hmm.
blueprint of a successful community.
Yeah.
So, can you give me like a TLDR version of what that blueprint is for people who might not have worked in communities like for years?
Yeah, so what we presented in that workshop was these 5 elements of a successful community. And this is what I've pulled out from research that I've done and work I've been doing over the last 15 years. And so we taught these 5 elements, and I'll share what they are at a high level right now, because each one we could go into depth on. The number one, and I will say it's one that people don't often think about until later. But the number one thing to consider is co-leadership. And I mentioned this earlier about dreamers and doers, is who do you have in your corner who can help you build this community? Because you don't build a community fully alone. You can, and that's where you get really isolated and then you burn out. I've done it before personally, so I know that's so. Considering co-leadership, and like I just shared my mentorship program with you, like how can you get folks in your core even more deeply involved? So that's a really important consideration. Rules that are based on, or I should say guidelines that are based on your values, and making those public and making them really clear to your members. What are the rules of engagement in this space? Because that says a lot about what people can expect. They're safe to share and what they maybe shouldn't share in your community and things like that. Third is purpose. And so we teach a framework called the Community Compass. And that is this 3-part framework, plus knowing your values is really important, but a 3-part framework that walks you through who you're serving really clearly. So you need to know who the audience is going to be for the community. And that needs to be as specific as you can possibly get. And then what you're going to do with them, and then why any of them should care at all about what you're building. Knowing those 3 things is really important. And then having really good welcoming. So the welcoming experience for your members sets the tone for everything else. And if you get that wrong, it's like when you first meet someone, that first impression really leaves a mark. So the welcoming process is really important. And then finally, but I think most importantly, is your presence as a leader. So how do you want to be? How do you want to show up? What impact or what feeling, which might sound a little touchy-feely, but it's really important. What feeling do you want to leave people with when they're in your community? So I think about that for myself. Like, I want people to feel welcome, included. I want them to feel from me that they can share things in our community that maybe they are really vulnerable and they've been afraid to share in other professional spaces. And so I bring that to our calls, I bring it to the content in the community, I bring it to emails that I write, all of it, because who you are matters more than what you do. Because any action you take as a community leader is going to come from who you are. So if you're feeling frantic about the community, stressed out about it, really just everything feels really difficult, then the community experience, it's probably going to impact what people are experiencing inside of your community. Your presence as a community leader is just so important, and getting that clear to yourself is something people usually skip, and I think is a huge mistake when they do.
Mm-hmm. I love this. Okay. I was recently talking with a friend who is like not from the community building industry. So he was asking me, like, I can empathize with that frame of mind right now. So I'm gonna ask you some cross questions from that frame of mind. So
Yes.
two things stood out to me, and I'll start with the one that you mentioned at the end, which is the touchy-feely stuff and presenting yourself as you want to, as you want the culture of the community to be. Like that when you're saying it, it sounds really obvious and something that you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think there's more nuance to it when it comes to applying it in practice. For example, you said that it has to come in your events, like the way you're presenting yourself at the events, or even in your emails. Can
Mhm.
you point out to any specific examples of like little things you might be doing in order to come as you want to be?
Yeah, it's so true. It's very nuanced and it sounds very easy in theory, and in practice, that is the work. So an example for I audit a lot of communities for our clients. So people will hire us and say, "What am I doing wrong here and how can I fix it?" And so I look at a lot of communities and I can read in between the lines, and members often can too. If you were just trying to create an engagement question in your community and you're just trying to get it posted, and you're maybe doing 15 other things that day, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to ask a question. So I run a nutrition community. I'm going to ask a question like, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? Blah, 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 blah. And I can read between the lines and see, oh, you didn't spend a lot of time writing that question. I can tell. And the way that you ask that question, it's not going to open up other people to answer. And maybe you didn't even share your own response to this question, and you're not role modeling vulnerability in answering the question yourself. So how I usually approach these things. So we just did this launch in May and early June for the CMJ community. And again, the things that I want to bring are this sense of warmth and inclusion and lack of stress, like a place where you can put all that down for a moment. And I noticed myself in the lead up to the launch getting really stressed out and feeling, oh my gosh, there's not enough time for everything. And this workshop, I want it to be so amazing. And I was getting really stressed out about it. And I was talking to Kelly, and she said to me, Carrie, remember our values and remember how you want to be in the community. And then that was a reset for me to think, okay, if I'm approaching this launch with frenzy and anxiety, how do I expect my members not to feel that? And then what does that stopping me from doing? So when I did that, I was able to just take some time away, which felt so painful to do. I'm just like, no, I just want to get it done. But I forced myself to take breaks from the screen. And then I came back and I could see I'm making this way too complex. Let's get rid of 5 more of the emails that we plan to run. Let's send just 5 really good emails. Let's take the workshop and strip out all the complexity. And it was because I have an academic background as well, I get really nerdy about these things. And I was like, bring in all this academic research. And Kelly's, now you have to include citations and all this stuff. And it's not that stuff's not interesting to me. In fact, we do research conversations. We just did a big academic research paper review in the community. But I don't need to go there on a public workshop. I don't need to go there. And so it's just, let's speak from what I know from experience. And that was I just had to remind myself over and over again. Remember, you want to be warm. You want to be inviting. You don't want to bring stress into your life by running this community, and you don't want to bring it into your members' lives. So how will I be different if that's what I want to bring into the world? And it's subtle, but that's a reset that I can use.
Yeah, this is a profound thought. Like the community is going to almost embody the vibes that you personally are feeling when you're running it. So if you're feeling anxious or insecure about it, then
Yep.
it will translate into the community.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And you like notice it all the time. For example, like I go to a lot of meetups and in-person gatherings and things now that it's safe to do. And you can tell when a leader is saying, oh, everybody, you should get each other's phone numbers and connect. And maybe that would be good if you did that. No, no, no. Like you can tell and then nobody really does it because they're just like, this leader isn't sure that's a good idea. So I'm not going to do it. So I've coached in-person gatherers on this too. It's turn to your neighbor, exchange WhatsApp numbers and stay in touch. I want you to follow up with each other in a week. Be clear. Yes, your vibes
Yeah.
impact everybody else.
Yeah, I love this. Now, the second thing that I wanted to ask was this point about co-leadership. As somebody who is just starting their community and who might be strapped for resources and doesn't have the resources to hire somebody to manage the community, like how should I be approaching co-leadership?
Yeah. So it can come at many different levels in your journey, especially as you're getting started. You might not have any members of your community, so you can't ask anybody to do anything with you. And so that's where I think it's just really important that we don't build our communities alone. And so that's why we built the CMJ community, is because I want creators to have a place where they have other people who are doing this work and can shoulder the burden of the emotional burden and the logistical burden alongside them. So find collaborators in that journey, even as you're getting started. We do like accountability buddies and stuff like that. And I'll stop talking about our community, but I think it's really important that we're not building alone, because again, that I've had points in my career where I have had horrible burnout, to the point where my first real community job, I burned out so badly that I had to take medical leave from the job for 6 weeks. And it's because I wasn't turning to anyone. I thought I had to do everything alone. And actually that medical leave was a blessing in disguise, because when I couldn't show up to work anymore, members showed up for each other. And I had some employees, they showed up, and I realized like, oh, I'm actually not that important. I think that's a really important lesson for all of us to realize we don't have to be the guru. We don't have to be the person with all the answers. We're actually the person that's opening up the opportunity for other people to step in and lead. What that looks like in the early stages is probably finding fellow creators and folks who are doing work similar to you to get accountability. And then as you build your community, what that looks like is seeing, okay, who is most active? Who's really showing up here? And turning to them and saying, hey, would you like to get more involved? And how would you like to get more involved? So that process of co-leadership will evolve and change over time.
Mm-hmm. I love this. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And I think this can be directly applicable to people who are just thinking of running their communities. So thank you for sharing that. Now there's this other one more thing that I remember talked about in the blueprint workshop that you hosted online. It was about participation rates. And I remember you mentioned that with any community, you should be spending most of your time with people who are participating. And that usually tends to be between like 5 to 20% of your members.
Yeah,
And
4 to
that's
20.
who you should be. Yeah, 4 to 20%. Now, with this advice, I want to transpose this advice on running a paid community membership where 100% of the people are paying you money. So if I am focusing on just, let's say, 20% of the members, then if I were doing that, then I would always have this tension at the back of my head that, okay, what about the rest 80%? Are they just going to churn? So how should I be thinking about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have I think I do have a whole YouTube video on churn and the reasons for it. There's good churn where some of those members are probably not a great fit for your community and probably will find that. And that's why they're not active. And you can let them go on their journey. But there's also bad that you want to resolve. And that's where the person doesn't feel seen or acknowledged in the community. You're not asking for any feedback from anybody but your core group. And yes, it's important to focus on the core. And when I'm saying focus on that 4 to 20%, I'm not saying neglect the other 80%. Definitely do not neglect them. Make sure that everybody has a great welcome process. Make sure that you do have some kind of feedback mechanism in place. So we'll run a quarterly survey of our members and make sure that they feel heard and seen. And what I know from those surveys and from the qualitative interviews I've done with members who are not active in our community is that They're oftentimes just paying because they want to support our work, like whether or not they're actively using it, which is wild to me. And I'm just so effing grateful for it. And they're just like, I don't really want to be part of another membership, but I really think what you're doing is important. I want to support other people. So there's that. We hear that. We also hear, I know that this is here. It's actually really nice to me to just know that this place is here when I need it. And that means I might not need it this month, and that's okay. And that gives me a lot of freedom to then let go of that squirrel thought in my mind of, oh my gosh, these people are going to churn, they're going to leave. But you will have churn. You will absolutely have people leave. You will not always understand why. And what I recommend is just like doing as much offboarding as you can for those folks and learning why they're leaving and learning if it's for something you need to solve or for a good reason that it's, they just found it wasn't the right fit. And we didn't just exclude them, but it's just that this wasn't right for them in this moment. Yeah, I think that's really important to not just neglect those folks.
Yeah. And I think there's also this element of if you're like focusing on the 5 to 20% of the people who are interested and who are participating, then it will also attract the other people because this creates, it's just like better vibes for everybody in the community and more social proof for the little things like events or even posting on the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that core group really engaged and building real relationships with those folks, like real friendships with them, that pays dividends for years and years to come. Yeah, it's never a waste of time to get to know people in your membership.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so I've also been watching your YouTube channel and you have some fantastic content over there. And this is like a great opportunity for me to ask some follow-up questions to what you've posted over there. That's what I've been doing, like already doing, but there are a few things that I wanted to ask you and pick your brain about. So I'm gonna do that now. In one of the videos, which was about reducing churn, you were talking about some ways of reducing churn, and one of the ways you mentioned was connecting members to one another. Talk to me about that and how do you enable that in the community?
Yeah, that's so important because people join communities not just to get access to content, but to meet people that they would otherwise not meet. And not just meet them, but actually form a relationship with them. If it's a business community, maybe find people to be on your podcast or just collaborations that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. So it's really important. And how I think it's there always needs to be some strategy in place, and how you do it is fully in your hands. How we do it is we currently use a software called Orbit, and we actually do matchmaking, like one-to-one matchmaking that way. I'm also really careful at the beginning of every single one of our live calls right now. We do a warm-up activity so that people can just get to know each other more as what I call in kind of a, again, touchy-feely way, get to know each other as whole human beings. Today, Kelly just facilitated an activity where she asked people what their favorite summer treat is. And so we learned that this person loves watermelon and this person loves ice cream, and just silly, lighthearted questions before we get into the more serious stuff. And that's really important to me because in community building, relationality is so crucial. And in our work cultures, we often skip that entirely just to get down to being productive. And I think that just sucks the life out of human beings. So, so we try to do something fun. I think it catches people a little bit off guard, but that's how they can say, oh yeah, you're the person who told me that they eat a whole watermelon every day in the summertime or whatever. And then that was me last summer when I was pregnant. So it really puts more context to the relationship. And that doesn't just happen, especially online. It happens more in person where you meet someone once and you really connect and you have a great experience. But online, you need to meet people a couple of times for it to then really cement into something that's more durable. And there's social science to back that up. It just takes longer to build a relationship digitally than it does in person.
Yeah. And I'm also curious about this automated matchmaking that you're doing on Orb. Does that really work? Like one of the reservations that people have is that when you're matching people using a software, like people don't usually connect and it's not effective. And I'm asking, like, full disclosure, I'm saying this as somebody who's running a software that helps people do similar automated matchmaking things. It's called Curate Connections. And I get this question all the time. So I would love to hear from you how you think about it.
Yeah, it does. So we One of the things that Orbit automates for us is a survey at the end of each connecting call. So what it does is it matches people. Now I have the ability, and I just did it today. I go in and I review the matches and I say, for the most part, once I've moved people and been like, I don't think that's gonna vibe. I'm like, I just don't think they're gonna have the greatest conversation. But usually I'm like, I don't know. Who am I to say that's gonna be true of? So I can review that now. I can move it around. So I do have some control over it. And then what the surveys tell me is that with 2 exceptions, we have 100% NPS on those conversations. So that means that 100% of people, other than those 2 conversations, would say, I would do this again and I would recommend it to someone else. So we know that they are happy with it and they continue to show up for that reason. Now, with those 2 conversations, that very much concerns me. It might just be 2 conversations, but to me, that's 2 bad experiences that happened that I had no control over. I wasn't there. I couldn't mediate it. And yeah, it's very concerning. But those things are going to happen whether you automate that with software or not. And I used to do manual matchmaking on people would tell me, oh, I want to be matched. And I would look at everybody and be like, this person has a cat and this person has a cat. And I think that they should be. There's like just turn my community brain on. It would take me forever. And I also had to think about time zones and all kinds of other things like that. People still didn't always like vibe with the person that they were matched with. So it's going to happen, but at least this way it's automated. That means it's going to happen every month. It's structured. You have a place to tell me if it didn't go well, which is really important because I didn't know that before. And yeah, I'm a huge proponent of software to improve that process because it's so much work. And that's one of the things that technology should take off of our plates and make more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And we're thinking similarly about our own tool. So that's an interesting piece of insight.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about your cohort-based course, Engage Your Online Community. So was there a particular lesson or maybe lessons or maybe just it wasn't even a lesson, maybe it was a tip that you shared in that course that constantly surprised the students?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it's something you already asked about, which was that 4 to
Okay.
20% participation. I think a lot of people
Right.
have this expectation that a successful community looks like everyone participating. It does not. It never looks like that. I've never seen, unless it's a group of 8 people and they're all, but even still, you get what's called social loafing, where one person, like it's like a group project, 1 or 2 people, they're just not going to be participating as much because we're busy. We have lives. There's nothing wrong with it. So that's just a true social dynamic. And that always surprised people. And again, I think helped them relax about what success looks like. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Okay. And in another video of yours, you mentioned that if you're thinking about starting a big community, you need to first think about getting the first 10 people inside the community. Now, I shared this tip with a friend, like I think 2 days ago, and her next question was, okay, if I have these 10 people inside my community, like what do I do then? And I was like, okay, that's a good question. I don't have a really good answer for you. Let me ask the expert and get back to you.
Yeah, it's a great question because you're like, okay, now I've got people here, but what am I doing? That's why it's so important to know going into that. You're not just gathering 10 random people where you're just like, oh, these are 10 cool people. I'm going to put them in a Facebook group or wherever I'm going to run my community. What needs to be clear from the outside is what is going to be the purpose of your community. It can change, but you need to put an initial idea down for why are we here? Who are we gathering? And why does it matter? So if that's not clear to you as you're building your community, then you're not going to know what to do with those 10 people. When that's clear, what I see is that the answer becomes up to what do we do together also is abundantly clear. Because, okay, if the purpose of the community is to, let me think of an example. It's like a dog lovers community. And that's who I want to gather, people who are really passionate about this. And together we're going to be learning, sharing best practices for caring for aging dogs, or I don't know, let's just say that's one of the things that we do together. Then you can immediately, with those 10 people, start to have conversations. You can start by saying, how old is your dog? And let's just share and introduce ourselves to one another. And then you can start by saying, okay, who do you want to hear from on caring for your aging dog? What experts do you know? Who do you want me to source? What kind of topics? So you're going to ask them for feedback. You're going to come to them as things are getting started in the community. You're going to say, I saw this person ask this question and no one has responded to it yet. Can you respond to it? So you're going to reach out to them privately to do that. So they're going to be your co-leaders. And if you gather 10, they're probably not all going to fully stay engaged throughout that process. Yeah. I was just talking in our coaching call today. That's not your fault that all 10 of them aren't participating. That's just the social dynamic of it. You can continue to grow that with time. So they're really the people that set the tone, set the culture with you, and they need to be responsive to you and want to be part of this purpose that you're creating. So you've got some front end work to do to set the purpose first and then bring them together.
I love this. I especially love this example that you just spun up about starting a dog lover community. It felt like a really generic examples. Okay, we're gonna be here. Everybody has dogs, and people are gonna be sharing their pictures. And my mind was immediately going to, okay, but that isn't gonna create a community. But then you immediately pointed to, okay, it's about caring for your aging dogs, and then you've got something there. So you just need like one thread to pull on, and that's what you need to get started.
Yeah, and that's where I threw out that idea of dog lovers. Maybe it's lovers of dogs who are like 10 and over, right?
Yeah,
that's got to be really specific.
Yeah, love that. Okay, really useful. Even for me, I know it because it's like turning my brains all sort of ways about how I think about communities. And I've made this mistake a lot of times where I was like, okay, there's a cool group of people and I happen to know like a whole bunch of them. Let me put them in a community. And then as soon as I do that, like, now what?
Yeah. And that happens a lot, is that communities just form more organically we have these people that are great. Now what do we do with them becomes the question. What I found, and this is my own experience having built like working groups and things like that, is that it's really hard to gather the people first and then set a purpose. You want to do purpose first, then people.
Yeah, like that. I think your community compass video will be a good supplement to this. I'll link to that in the show notes.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, now I'm gonna ask you, I had this platform question here because that's one of the most common things that people ask. You are using Circle, and there are obviously different communities on Facebook, Discord, whatever. So there are essentially two types of platforms. One is like a community in a box solution like Circle, and the other is more of a place where people already go to and you carve your own space there, like a Facebook or a Slack. If I'm starting a new community, should I start on one of these Facebooks or Slacks and then gradually migrate over to Circle, or should I just start on Circle? That's the general.
It's actually a really complicated question. People think is simple, and it creates all kinds of operational nightmares down the road. Because you can see how if you started on Facebook or Slack, migrating to Circle later, it's a huge headache and you lose people in the process. You are going to lose members. You will lose members. And this is true whether you have a community of 50 people or whether I'm talking with a global corporation right now who has thousands and thousands of people in Facebook groups and they're moving to their own proprietary platform. They're going to lose customers. Like, it's painful. It's very painful. Yeah. So I say it's complex because there's a number of questions you need to ask before making that decision. And there are over 80 community platforms today, 80. And that number is always, it's shrinking and growing at all times because new products get launched. And then there's been a lot of consolidation, people buying other companies or acquiring other companies recently. But yeah, so making that decision is not as simple as just saying, oh, are people on Facebook? Okay, great, go use Facebook. But I also, at the same time, I'm aware that while I'm saying this, I also don't want that to freak people out and stop them. They just feel so overwhelmed and they can't move forward. So it's really, really important that you figure out your priorities in terms of, are you going to be charging for this community one day? If yes, I would immediately suggest that you look outside of free options like Slack and Facebook groups and look instead at options like Discord has paid options now. I forget what it's called, and Circle and Mighty is another one. Look at those because purpose built for creators. And so you're not going to have to then integrate 50 different platforms together operationally to make things work. And that's another huge reason why I ended up going Evergreen and moving all of our community membership operations to Circle. Having it all under one technology is so much easier if you're a creator. If you have a giant team of even just 10 folks, you can have all this different software. You can integrate it. You can build custom drivers and things like that. But if you're like a 1 to 2 person shop, having 3 different software you're using to even figure out, like, are people engaging in this one platform? And then how is that affecting retention rates of our customers, another, and all that? I had to go with the simple option for myself.
Yeah.
It's a really complex question. Technical selection is one of the services that we offer as a consulting firm, because I know it stops people from making progress and I want them to make the right decision, because migration is painful.
Yeah. Where did you move from before Circle? What platform are you using?
So fortunately, I had a lot of experience community building before launching the membership. So I've been on Circle since 2020.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I have not had to migrate, and I knew that I would never wanted to migrate. So that's why I picked Circle, because they launched in 2020. I was one of the early users of the platform, and I was like, I see where this is going. I see their roadmap. I see their leadership, and I'm going to put my money here. But I've worked on Higher Logic. I've worked in Khoros, which are these like more robust, expensive platforms. You're going to spend 20,000 or more per year on them. I've worked in Mighty Networks, and I had problems with all of them for different reasons. And I knew my technical requirements. So you need to know what your technical requirements are. What are you actually going to be doing in the community? And for me, those platforms just didn't meet our requirements, and Circle did.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. That's it for the mini masterclass round. I think this segment will be really golden for anybody who's looking to start a community as a creator and just help them get the common, like frequently asked questions checked off before they start.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for this. Now I have just a couple more questions for you. There are more like sort of general questions regarding your work. So you, as you've mentioned in this interview a couple of times, you have an academic background in communities, like a really extensive academic background. That is not something that I've seen in any other community builder before. Can you tell me, how do you put that academic work into practice? And yeah, how do you go from theory to practice, basically?
Yeah, it's difficult because academics generally don't work with practitioners, and practitioners generally don't work with academics. I went to grad school in 2019 and I just finished last year. It took me longer than I wanted it to. And that was something I realized very quickly. It was like, I had always thought that academics were eager to get their work out into practitioners' hands. And actually, a lot of them are not. In fact, they look at practitioners and what they call industry as like kind of this evil, capitalistic, horrible thing that they want to keep it out of their hands, and they're going to take the research and do horrible things with it. And they're right in some cases. And if you look at the history of research, like they're right. But building that bridge is really difficult. And it's especially difficult because academics don't write for practitioners. So this is why we're doing these once a month research reviews in the CMJ community where we read an academic paper together. So I'm teaching members how to read an academic paper. Here's how you skim it. Do not get bogged down in it because there's so many details. And if you don't know statistics, you don't need to know statistics to understand what happened from this paper. But I don't want you thinking, I can't read this paper because I don't know stats. So I'm starting to teach folks how to do that and build that bridge. And then what we really focus on in our discussions and what we will continue to focus on is what were the key takeaways from this paper that we can apply. So we just read a paper about, it was communities of practice inside of organizations. And what are the factors that impact engagement in those communities? And what this paper showed was that perceived value of the community was really important. So actually knowing the community was valuable in someone's job, but also how happy they were in their job affects whether they participate in the community. Right. So that was, for us, we're like, hey, what can we take away from this? Actually, if we're creating a community around, let's say, software developers, and it's not active, that might not have anything to do with us. They might actually just hate their jobs. And we need to work with people who don't hate their jobs in order for this to be more effective. And you're always going to have people that hate their jobs. So let's take some of the pressure off of ourselves. So yeah, that's how I think about taking things from theory to practice is, and community builders need to be having these conversations and reading these papers for them to be effective. But yeah, I think going to grad school is really important because I learned theory, like communication theories, important psychological theories, and can now apply that to like not just looking at here's a specific example of what's happening in a community and this only happens here, but actually what is the larger theory that explains why these things are happening? And so that 4 to 20% principle, that comes directly from some of my academic work and knowing, again, this concept of social loafing, that there are people who will not participate and that that's okay. Like all of that is informed by academic research.
Hmm. I like that. And is there any, just curious, is there any academic paper that you feel community practitioners should go check out, or anything that more people should read?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. If you want to nerd out on like data and surveillance and things like that, I think that's all really important for the ethics side of our work. There's a book called, I have it up here. Yes, The Data Revolution by Rob
Okay.
Kitchen. It is dense and very boring. But I think it's really important. Also, the work of Dana Boyd, Danahboyd. She's been doing work. She did work on teenagers and social media back in the early 2000s and continues to contribute to the field. There's so many. It's a great question. I
Okay.
feel like I'm going to forget people and then
All right. Okay. I'll just link to these two, and maybe
you can
you can
send you
send
more.
me some things. Yeah. And we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And now one final question for this interview. So, what would you like to leave the listeners with as they go and try to build their communities as a creator?
Mm. I think the thing I'd like them to know more than anything else is that they are not alone in their work and that their work is very important. I don't care if you are building a community around dogs and or like knitting or your favorite records on vinyl or whatever. We need people to bring us together, and it is hard work to do, and that's why a lot of people don't do it. And so I just want folks to know that their work is really meaningful and really valuable, even if you can't see the immediate impacts of it, because you often can't. You just can't.
Yeah.
But it has deep ripple effects, all of it. And that a community builder should have a community of their own. Like, it's really important that we don't get isolated in this because that is the road to burnout.
Yeah. I love this. This is such a nice note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this interview, Carrie. This has been a pleasure to pick your brain and learn about the community building questions that I've been pondering since I saw your YouTube videos and your workshops. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to learn from you.
Thank you so much. These are great questions.